For a whole century, the whole 20th century, there was a lot of research observing animals in the wild, and it was known that animals can be quite nasty to each other. And it was discovered that this conflict focused around food and mating opportunities, and mammals can be quite hierarchical, and the higher they rise in the status hierarchy, the better their opportunity to keep their genes alive. And we have inherited our genes from ancestors who played these games, as it were, and your happy chemicals reward you when you do something that keeps your genes alive. So in the 21st century, the nastiness of animals has been deleted. All of that research is ignored. And now we're given a lot of studies that suggest that animals are cooperative and altruistic. And not to spend the whole time on this, but it is a rather distorted picture.
Well, it's only half the picture. It'd be like saying humans are only bad or humans are only good, right? I mean, the truth is always bouncing back and forth between the two.
Yes, but I would say it's much less than half in the sense that I won't give an exact number, but if an animal cooperates, they're cooperating because it helps them meet their survival needs. They're not cooperating for the greater good. And I think I'm not trying to be negative, it's really positive, because most people, they have this idealized view of the world, and then when the world falls short, then they're upset. And they think, well, I'm just pure altruist, so how come people aren't altruistic to me? But when you get real about your own self-interest, then you say, yes, I'm cooperating because I expect cooperation. And then you get careful about how you invest that effort, just like a monkey is careful when it chooses whose fur it grooms.
That's fascinating. So what you're saying is we really have to have discretion as to what we're doing, be conscious of what we're doing, when we're doing it, and apply these things strategically almost, like not just willy-nilly, right? Is that
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you
Well,
say?
you have to be realistic. You
Yeah.
don't have to listen to what I'm saying, but if you're not realistic, then you could, just to use a famous example, you could spend your whole life buying coffee for strangers. But if you end up alone at night, wondering why there's nobody there buying a coffee for you, you can get realistic.
That's a great example. I'm sure there's many people that have done things like that. Like, I'm such a good person, and why don't I have this, that, the other, right? Yep, I'm sure we all do that. So I guess then to loop that, what you're saying is that that's not realistic because as evidenced by the animal kingdom, they don't do things like that, right? Instead, they would do something strategically, like as in have more discretion to know if you should buy someone coffee.
Yes, but when you say strategic, animal has a much smaller brain. And that's the whole point of this, is that we have two brains. We have the big fluffy brain, the big pink fluffy brain that uses language that tells you all the PR messages that you like to think about yourself. But under that, we have the animal brain that actually controls your brain chemicals, that makes you happy and unhappy. And that brain is wired by experience. So when an animal reaches out, and like you see a lot of these photos, it looks like animals are always cuddling and patting each other on the back, which is very biased, like they could spend a week getting that one shot, right? But when an animal reaches out like that, it's building social alliances in order to have protection for itself. But the animal brain can't think about the future. So it has this nonverbal way of thinking about it, which is when I pat your back, it triggers a good feeling chemical that builds a pathway for both of us. And then hopefully when I'm in trouble, you will come and pat my back. That's a very simplistic way to explain it.
And in the animal kingdom, do they do that? Do they eventually reciprocate? Do they remember a good deed by another animal?
You will love to know that the truth is sometimes yes and sometimes no. And that's why the animal brain evolved to make decisions rather than decisions based on past experience, rather than just hugging everybody all the time.
And another interesting thing about animals is it true they don't, this is a really ignorant question, you're gonna have to forgive me, but they don't have consciousness of their mortality, right? I mean, they don't.
Exactly. Yes, I write that in all of my books.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but yeah, it's not an ignorant question because the idealized view of animals is so popular. But I'm sorry, what where were you going?
No, that was basically it because I mean they don't, it's all subconsciously about keeping the genes alive. However, they're not conscious of the fact they're going to die. So it's kind of like a,
And they're also not conscious of their genes. So how is it that it all turns out this way? And when I say this way, any textbook on evolutionary biology or evolutionary psychology explains this. I mean, explains the past sentence, but the next sentence is my original work, which is basically when you do something that's good for your genes, a happy chemical turns on.